Let's not waste time. You are spending more money than you need to every single week on branded products that are charging you for the logo on the front rather than what's inside. Today, we're naming them, and at the end, we're also naming 3 brands that actually justify the premium price. Number 1, Heinz baked beans. There is a sentence most British people cannot say out loud without feeling faintly embarrassed, and it is this: I cannot tell the difference between Heinz beans and own brand beans. They can't, though. Multiple blind taste tests, conducted by consumer groups, food journalists, and frankly anyone who's ever run out of Heinz and made do with Aldi's, consistently show that the gap people expect to taste simply isn't there. And yet Heinz baked beans in tomato sauce, 415 grams, costs around £1.20 at most supermarkets. Tesco's own brand, same weight, costs 28 pence. That's not a small difference. That's 4 cans of Tesco beans for the price of 1 Heinz. So what are you buying with that extra 92 pence? The recipe is nearly identical. Haricot beans, tomatoes, sugar, modified maize starch, salt, spice extracts. The beans are probably grown in the same fields. The processing is industrial either way. The product that lands in your pot on a Tuesday morning is, in any meaningful sense, the same thing. What you're actually buying is certainty. The red label is a guarantee that nobody at the table will say anything. It is the safe choice. And Heinz charges handsomely for safety. Here's the move. Buy own brand for 2 weeks. Tell no one. See what happens. Nothing will happen. And you'll save about £4 a month on beans alone, which sounds modest until you remember this is just beans. Number 2, Lurpak Spreadable. I want to be careful here because Lurpak, the straight-up block butter, is genuinely excellent. This is specifically about Lurpak Spreadable, the 500-gram tub, currently around £4.25 in most UK supermarkets, and the quiet sleight of hand buried in the ingredients list. Lurpak Spreadable is not butter. It is butter blended with rapeseed oil, which is what makes it soft enough to spread straight from the fridge. That's the whole innovation. They took butter, added cheap vegetable oil, and often charge you more than the butter costs on its own. A 250-gram block of Lurpak costs around £2.10. That's £4.20 per 500 grams of pure, actual butter. The spreadable version, diluted with rapeseed oil, costs more per equivalent unit of dairy. You are paying a premium to receive a product that contains less butter than butter. The fix is not complicated. Leave a small amount of regular butter out on the counter in a covered butter dish. It will stay perfectly spreadable for up to a week at room temperature. Lurpak themselves acknowledge this. Or buy any number of own brand spreadable alternatives for under £2. Aldi's beautifully buttery. Tesco own brand spreadable. They do exactly the same job. Lurpak Spreadable is a convenience product sold at a luxury price. The convenience costs you about £2.25 per tub. Per year, if you go through one a week, that's over £100 for the privilege of not keeping butter out of the fridge. Number 3. Cathedral City cheddar. Right. Cathedral City. This one requires a bit of nuance, so stay with me. Cathedral City is the best-selling cheese brand in the UK. Not best reviewed, best-selling. There's a difference, and it matters. The reason it sells isn't because it's the best cheddar available. It's because it's everywhere, it's consistent, and it's been marketed so aggressively for so long that it has achieved the status of default. When people say they want cheddar, many of them mean they want Cathedral City, not because they've compared it, but because it's simply the name their brain retrieves. A 400-gram block of Cathedral City Mature costs around £4.50. Tesco Finest Mature Cheddar, same weight, costs £3.80, and in independent taste tests regularly matches or outperforms Cathedral City. More to the point, a 400-gram block of unbranded mature cheddar from Aldi or Lidl costs about £2.50 and is mainly manufactured by Wyke Farms, one of the most respected cheesemakers in Somerset. That's the same source as some far more expensive supermarket cheeses. The cheese world is one of the few places where supermarket own label genuinely beats the brand, not just on price, but on taste. Cathedral City's dominance is a marketing achievement, not a culinary one. If you care about flavour, buy the block from the back of the shelf with the smallest label. If you care about the name on the packet more than the flavour, that's your business. Number 4. Gu Desserts. Gu is interesting because it's a brand that's almost entirely constructed from aesthetic signals, the black ramekin, the lowercase name with the umlaut that is purely for branding because it feels fancy. The portion size, exactly 2 small pots calibrated to feel like restaurant indulgence rather than a supermarket purchase. Two Goo chocolate soufflé desserts cost around £3.50. They weigh approximately 82 grams each. That's £3.50 for 164 grams of chocolate pudding. For context, a 390-gram McVitie's chocolate tart from the same chilled section costs £1.50. I'm not saying they're the same product, they aren't, but the price per gram difference is so extreme that the Goo ramekin is doing an enormous amount of the work here. And then there's the ramekin itself. Goo has built a secondary narrative around them. Keep them, use them, they're little gifts. This is clever because it partially justifies the price. You're buying 2 desserts and 2 dishes. Except most people have a drawer full of Goo ramekins they never use, which means they have been paying a pot tax on every dessert purchase for years. The product inside the ramekin is fine. It's well made for a chilled mass market product, but you are paying for packaging and positioning, and that markup is steep. Hotel chocolates sell better chocolate products at comparable prices with less theatre. Or, if you want a genuinely good chocolate pot, Marks & Spencer's own brand chilled chocolate desserts are almost as good at half the price. Goo sells the experience of treating yourself, but you could still do this and spend less. Number 5. Mr. Kipling Cakes. Here is the truth about Mr. Kipling. He does not exist. There is no Mr. Kipling. The name was invented in 1967 by J. Walter Thompson, the advertising agency, as a fictional gentleman baker to give the brand warmth and provenance. Exceedingly good cakes, the tagline promised, and people believed it because a man called Mr. Kipling sounded like he meant it. What you actually get in a box of Mr. Kipling Bakewell slices, around £2 for 6 at most supermarkets, is this: sugar, wheat flour, palm oil, pasteurized whole egg, humectant, glycerol, dextrose, glucose syrup, almonds 3%, preservative, sorbic acid, and a list of additives that continues for another 8 items. Glycerol is in there to keep the product soft and moist on a shelf for several months. That softness you associate with Mr. Kipling isn't the texture of a fresh cake, it's the texture of a cake engineered to resist aging. Aldi's own brand Bakewell slices cost £1 and 9p for 6, and use a broadly similar ingredient list because there's really no other way to mass-produce shelf-stable cakes at this price point. They taste essentially identical. The Mr. Kipling Premium is, in this case, purely for the ghost of a fictional baker. If you want an exceedingly good cake, find a local bakery. They make them every morning. The difference is immediately obvious. If you want a snack that lasts on a shelf for 3 months, buy own brand. The fiction of Mr. Kipling doesn't make his cakes better, it just makes them more expensive. Number 6. Warburtons bread. This one is going to be contentious because Warburtons is a family business, a British institution, and deeply embedded in Northern identity in a way that makes criticising it feel vaguely unpatriotic. But bear with me, Warburtons medium-sliced white bread, the standard 800-gram loaf, currently retails at around £1.50 at most UK supermarkets. Tesco own brand equivalent, 75p. That price difference exists despite the fact that both products are made with essentially identical ingredient profiles, both are produced at industrial scale, and both are often baked fresh and delivered to stores on the same schedule. The brand argument for Warburtons is consistency and quality. The bread does have a slightly softer crumb and a more uniform slice, but that consistency is achieved through the same emulsifiers, flour treatment agents, and dough conditioners used across the industry. It's not handcrafted. It's industrial baking done well, but so is the 75p loaf. The deeper problem with Warburtons is their premium line expansion. The protein bread, the seeded options, the toasty loaves, these range from £2 to £2.80 and position themselves alongside artisan-adjacent health credentials that the ingredient lists don't quite support. A Warburtons protein loaf contains modified wheat starch and soy protein isolate, industrial additives dressed up in wellness language. If bread matters to you, genuinely, go to a local bakery or find a supermarket in-store baked loaf. If it doesn't matter that much, buy the 75p loaf. The middle ground, where Warburtons largely operates, is the most expensive place to buy things that don't actually differ much from what's on either side of them. Number 7. Innocent smoothies. Innocent is perhaps the most successful brand identity project in British food history. The brand launched in 1999 with handwritten labels, a little grass-covered van, and a personality built entirely around being small, ethical, cheerful, and honest. People loved it. It felt real. Coca-Cola bought a majority stake in 2010. They now own the company outright. The grass van is still on the packaging. A 360 milliliter innocent smoothie costs around £3.20 in most UK supermarkets. It contains fruit, real fruit, to be clear, not concentrate, and that's genuinely good. Innocent don't add sugar. The product itself is not a scam. What is worth examining is the price arithmetic. You're paying £3.20 for the equivalent of roughly 2 to 3 pieces of blended fruit and some packaging. A punnet of strawberries, a banana, and a splash of apple juice take 90 seconds in a blender. They cost about 80p. The result is fresher, contains more fibre, blending preserves it better than juicing, and tastes better because the fruit wasn't blended, pasteurised, and bottled weeks before you drink it. The other issue is sugar content. An innocent strawberries and bananas smoothie contains around 30 grams of sugar per bottle. The NHS counts smoothies as one of your 5-a-day maximum of 1 portion. They're not a health product in the way the branding implies. They're a convenient sugar vehicle made from real fruit with excellent marketing. Pay for the convenience if you need it. Just be clear that you're paying for convenience and Coca-Cola's quarterly reports, not for your health. Number 8. McVitie's digestives. McVitie's digestive biscuits are not a rip-off in the way that some other products on this list are. They're not wildly overpriced. They're not secretly terrible. At £1.35 for 400 grams, they're a reasonable product at a middling price. The issue with McVitie's is subtler and in some ways more interesting than simple overcharging. The digestive biscuit is entirely generic. It is not a patented formula. It is not a protected recipe. It is wheat flour, vegetable oil, wholemeal wheat flour, sugar, oatmeal, raising agents, and salt in slightly varying ratios across dozens of manufacturers. The Tesco own brand digestive, 95p for the same quantity, is nutritionally and texturally indistinguishable. Aldi sells theirs for 79p. None of that is the interesting part. The interesting part is the chocolate digestive. McVitie's milk chocolate digestives cost £1.69 for 266 grams. Aldi's equivalent costs £1.09 for the same quantity. We found the chocolate layer on a McVitie's is measurably thinner than on many own-brand alternatives, something you can verify by weighing the two products, yet the brand consistently commands a 50% premium. What McVitie's has done is build such a dominant association between the word digestive and the brand that many consumers effectively believe they are the only maker of the product. They're not. They invented it in 1892 and have been benefiting from that historical fact in their pricing ever since. The biscuit is fine. The intellectual property halo is doing the financial heavy lifting. Buy own brand digestives. The biscuit doesn't know its own name. Number 9. Kellogg's cereals. This needs to start with a number. Kellogg's cornflakes, £2.75 for 500 grams. Tesco own-brand cornflakes, £1.05 for 500 grams. Both are made from milled maize, sugar, salt, barley malt flavouring, and an identical suite of added vitamins. The vitamins are added because the processing strips the natural ones out, which is something both products have in common, and neither shouts about. What Kellogg's has mastered, more than almost any food brand in the UK, is the children's aisle premium. Frosties, Crunchy Nut, Rice Krispies, Special K. Each product sits in a slightly different market position. Kids, indulgence, health, but all follow the same model. Coat a cheap grain substrate with sugar, add a mascot or a wellness claim, price at twice the own brand equivalent. Special K deserves particular mention. It has been marketed as a weight management product for decades, centered around the infamous Special K challenge. A 500-gram box costs around £3.50. The first ingredient after rice is sugar. The health positioning is achieved entirely through portion control framing in the marketing, not through the nutritional profile of the product. Kellogg's isn't unique in any of this. It's just the most practiced. The grain is cheap, the processing is cheap, the box, with its photography, its mascots, its wellness language, is where the money went, and it's where you get charged. Own brand cereals in Aldi, Lidl, Tesco and Sainsbury's are often made in the same contract facilities. Some are literally packed by the same manufacturer on consecutive runs. The Cocoa Pops box changes. The cereal doesn't. Number 10. Aunt Bessie's frozen roasties, 800 grams for around £2.50, represent one of the great long cons in British supermarket history, and I mean that with some affection, because whoever named this brand knew exactly what they were doing. There is no Aunt Bessie. Like Mr. Kipling, she was invented, in this case in 1995 by William Jackson Food Group, as a warm, dependable, slightly nostalgic feminine presence to make the idea of buying someone else's roast potatoes Feel like being helped out by a beloved relative rather than admitting you've handed that particular job to a factory. The product itself: parboiled potatoes, sunflower oil, dried potato flake, maize starch, salt. They work. They crisp up reasonably well. Nobody is saying the potatoes are unpleasant. But here's the arithmetic. A 2.5 kilogram bag of Maris Piper potatoes from Tesco costs £1.09. From that bag you can make 8 to 10 portions of genuinely better roast potatoes, crispier, fluffier, more flavourful, for a total cost per portion of about 11 pence. Aunt Bessie's costs about 31 pence per portion, nearly 3 times more, for a product that is objectively inferior because par-frozen potatoes cannot match the texture of a freshly roughed-up, floury Maris Piper. The roasting process matters. Anyone who has learned to parboil, steam dry and roast potatoes in properly hot fat knows that the result is incomparably better than anything from a freezer bag. And this is not a difficult thing to learn. It takes about 5 minutes of active attention. Aunt Bessie exists for one legitimate reason. You've forgotten to buy potatoes. Buy a bag for the freezer and don't reach for Aunt Bessie unless you're genuinely out of options. When you do, ask yourself how a fictional elderly woman has been charging you a 200% markup on carbohydrates for 30 years. It's actually impressive. Now, 3 brands that actually earn it. Worth it. Number 1, Fever-Tree. Fever-Tree tonic water costs around £2 for 4 200ml bottles. That's roughly 4 times what supermarket own brand tonic costs. It is worth every penny. And here is why that's not a contradiction of everything said above. Fever-Tree uses quinine sourced from the Democratic Republic of Congo, the same region that supplied tonic water to the British Empire, combined with spring water and natural fruit oils, rather than synthetic flavourings. The difference is not subtle. Generic tonic water uses saccharin or aspartame as sweeteners and sometimes artificial quinine flavouring. The result is a flatter, slightly medicinal, vaguely plastic-tasting product that actively degrades whatever spirit it's mixed with. With Fever-Tree, you can taste the individual components of a gin and tonic. The botanicals in the gin aren't swamped by artificial sweetness. This matters for a drink where the mixer is 50 to 60% of the glass. The price premium here reflects genuinely different ingredients: higher quality quinine, natural oils, no artificial sweeteners, and a genuinely better result in the glass. This is not a marketing story, it is a formulation story. The brand that started it is still the best version of it. Worth it. Number 2, Pip and Nut Almond Butter. Pip and Nut Almond Butter costs around £4.50 for 300 grams. Standard own brand almond butter costs about £2.80 for the same quantity. The premium exists and it's real. So is the difference. Many supermarket almond butters contain added palm oil, salt and sometimes sugar, ingredients added to extend shelf life, improve texture and reduce cost. The result is a product that tastes fine but has an artificially smooth, slightly cloying quality and separates less because the palm oil is stabilizing the emulsion artificially. Pip and Nut use only almonds, sometimes 2 ingredients, almonds and sea salt. The texture is slightly less uniform and it does separate if left to stand, which is actually the sign of a product doing what physics says it should do. The flavour is noticeably richer and more complex because nothing is competing with or masking the nut. For people who eat almond butter regularly, on toast, in porridge, in cooking, the difference accumulates. At this price point, the premium is justified because it reflects a production decision to use less of nothing and more of the actual thing the product is named after. Worth it. Number 3, Clipper Fairtrade Teas. Clipper tea costs around £3.50 for 80 bags. Yorkshire tea, itself a respectable product, costs about £3 for the same quantity. PG Tips and Tetley sit around £2.50, so Clipper is charging more. Why does it make this list? Because Clipper is certified organic, fair trade and unbleached. The bags contain no elemental chlorine bleaching, which is an underreported issue with some standard tea bags that use whitening processes that can leave trace chemical residues in the paper. The tea itself is sourced from farms with independently verified labour and environmental standards. More selfishly, it tastes excellent. A good Assam-forward breakfast blend with enough body to stand up to milk and no bitterness if you overbrew it slightly. It's forgiving tea, well-sourced tea, and the extra 50 pence per box goes to something legible and verifiable, rather than into the marketing budget of a multinational. Most tea premiums are brand fiction. Clipper's premium is supply chain reality. When a price difference reflects actual choices made about how something was grown and who was paid, that's a different kind of spend. You're not funding a fictional Yorkshire farmer, you're funding actual ones under decent conditions. That's worth 50 pence. Here's the thing. Nobody is telling you to stop buying every product on this list. Some of them taste fine, some of them are convenient. Some of them are just woven into the habit of your weekly shop in a way that makes changing feel harder than it is. But every one of those 10 products has a cheaper, often better alternative sitting 2 shelves along. And the 3 that earn their price are worth knowing about precisely because they're proof that premiums can be real. They're just not real as often as the supermarket shelves would have you believe. Read the unit prices, flip the packet over, compare the ingredients. The brand on the front rarely tells you as much as the label on the back.